Leslie seemed to find a moment of liberation when the secret of her birth mother was revealed. When Peaches revealed that Barbara was her mother. This truth not only shocked Leslie, but also instantly transformed her from a woman surrounded by scandal to the heiress of a huge fortune. In an instant, the years of being humiliated, scorned, and looked down upon as an outsider seemed to disappear, replaced by the image of a powerful, recognized woman who could control her own destiny. Her daughter Eva, who had resented but then became closer to her mother when witnessing the change in fortune, initially joined in the joy, thinking that this was a new chapter of light for both mother and daughter. However, in that atmosphere, the seeds of division were soon sown. When Anita, the head of the Dupree family, realized that the trust she had set up for Barbara's family had inadvertently given direct rights to Leslie, she was furious. For Anita, it was not just a matter of money, but also an insult that someone who was originally an enemy was now recognized as a blood relative of the family. The Dupree family, already tense with intrigue and conflict, now had to face the intrusion of someone who was already considered a problem and who now had financial power to fight them. Anita saw a dark future where Leslie and Eva were not only a peripheral threat but could dominate the family chessboard. While Leslie was enjoying her victory and thought she had finally held her head high above all, Eva was quietly pulled into another vortex. The fortune did not belong only to Leslie, but by law, Eva, as Barbara's niece, also had a share. When this information accidentally reached Eva, she began to look at her mother with different eyes. Was Leslie really willing to share this power and wealth, or would she keep it all for herself? That question haunted Eva every day, every hour, and it opened the first cracks in the already complicated relationship. Tomas, an outsider but the first person Eva trusted to share her secret, became the catalyst. Eva, in the excitement of learning about her mother's true identity, accidentally revealed to Tomas the truth about Leslie's origins and about the possibility of inheritance. Tomas, although not directly benefiting, inadvertently planted dangerous ideas in Eva's ears. He questioned whether Leslie deserved to keep all the property, and whether Eva, as a biological granddaughter, had the right to claim a fair share. These words, at first just a breeze, gradually took root in Eva's mind, stirring up greed and suspicion towards the mother who raised her. While Eva struggled with the temptation, outside speculation increasingly pushed her and Leslie into a corner. Rumors spread that Eva was not Leslie's biological daughter. A horrifying hypothesis was whispered in the community. Eva was actually a kidnapped child, and her real parents were Ted and Nicole. This hypothesis not only shook the foundation of Leslie and Eva's relationship, but also shook the Dupree and Richardson families. If this truth was confirmed, Eva would not only lose the image of the mother she had forgiven many times, but also face the pain of being deceived for the rest of her life. Leslie, who thought she had won, now became the center of suspicion. Did she truly love Eva as a daughter, or was she just using her as a pawn in her power struggle? This question pushed Eva into a state of extreme tension. She had forgiven Leslie many times, believing that maternal love was above all mistakes. But if she discovered that she had been kidnapped and deceived about her origins, would she be able to endure it any longer? While Eva was confused, Anita was secretly looking for a way to turn the situation around. If she could prove that Eva was not Leslie's child, she would completely eliminate two threats at once. A scenario was set up, using Eva's own suspicion to provoke her to sue Leslie, turning mother and daughter into public enemies. Once Eva officially stood up against Leslie, the Dupree family would just have to sit back and watch the two enemies destroy each other. The storm intensified when documents related to child abductions many years ago were accidentally dug up. Some fragmentary evidence hinted that Leslie had been involved in a strange disappearance, right around the time Eva was born. These details were not enough to convict, but they were enough to sow doubt and make Eva panic. In her mind, all the pieces began to fit together. The lies, the gaps in her childhood, the secrets that Leslie had always avoided. All of them led to a single possibility. She was not the biological child of the woman she once called mother. Eva faced a fateful crossroads. If she remained silent, she could continue to live in luxury with Leslie, enjoying the lavish life that Barbara left behind. But if she spoke up and sued Leslie to claim her own inheritance from Barbara's foundation, all the secrets would be exposed, and the relationship between mother and daughter would be broken forever. In Eva's mind, greed and betrayal were fiercely torn with fear and affection. She knew that with just one wrong move, everything would fall apart. Leslie, on the other hand, was not naive. She sensed the change in Eva's eyes and attitude. She knew that her daughter was wavering, and that Tomas or some other force had blown dangerous thoughts into Eva's ears. Leslie had to protect not only her assets, but also her identity and hidden crimes. She understood that if Eva truly turned her back, it would not only be the loss of a child, but also the end of herself. The war between mother and daughter will soon break out. Eva, in anger and despair, may file a lawsuit against Leslie to claim her rightful inheritance from Barbara's trust. If that happens, who will be the one to get justice? The woman who once bore the name of her mother but concealed her crimes? Or the young woman who was deceived all her life but now has a chance to get justice? The answer will not only decide the fate of mother and daughter, but also reshape the balance of power in the Dupree family. And above all, it will expose a terrible truth. The wealth that Leslie thought was her final victory may actually be the beginning of her downfall. When Eva officially filed a lawsuit against Leslie to claim the inheritance from Barbara's foundation, the entire Dupree family community was shocked. The secrets that had been buried for so long were now at risk of being exposed under the light of justice. The Dupree family, already torn apart by ambition and power struggles, now witnessed an even more tragic scenario, when the enemy was no longer outside but within the family. Leslie, who thought that becoming Barbara's heir was the greatest victory of her life, was now confronted by her own adopted daughter. Eva was no longer the weak or easily manipulated daughter, but a brave opponent, willing to sacrifice family ties to reclaim what she believed she deserved. The event of Eva suing Leslie was not only a legal event, but also turned into a social and media battlefield. Newspapers, social networks, and even people in the community were all talking. Some people take Eva's side, sympathizing with a girl suspected of being a kidnapping victim, deceived about her identity all her life. But there are also those who condemn Eva, believing that she was blinded by greed, betraying the person who raised her. It is this polarization that causes both Leslie and Eva to be isolated, and the relationships around them to crack. Nicole and Ted, upon hearing rumors that Eva might be their lost daughter, begin to look for evidence. At first, they do not dare to believe it, but the deeper they dig, the more the pieces of the past fit together in a terrifying way. Nicole remembers her daughter who mysteriously disappeared many years ago, under circumstances that were never clarified. Ted cannot forget the pain of losing a child, and when he hears about the lawsuit, his heart is shaken. If Eva really is their daughter, Leslie will not only be a liar but also a criminal who has destroyed their family. This truth, if proven, would turn Eva's entire lawsuit against Leslie into a terrible legal storm. Meanwhile, Anita was secretly manipulating the situation. She saw an opportunity to remove both Leslie and Eva from the power chessboard. Anita quietly gave Nicole and Ted old documents, hinting at the possibility of Eva's kidnapping. She did this not out of sympathy for Eva, but because she knew that if the truth were brought to court, Leslie would completely collapse, and Eva would lose all ground to continue her fight with Dupree. Anita calculated that even if Eva was proven to be Nicole and Ted's daughter, it would still take her a long time to integrate, to assert her new position, while the Dupree family would have enough time to consolidate their power. Leslie sensed the dangers surrounding her. She knew that Eva had changed, that her daughter was swayed by Tomas and by the sweet words from outside. But instead of trying to heal, Leslie chose to confront, because she was too afraid of the truth. Deep down, she knew that if the truth about the kidnapping was exposed, she would not only lose everything but also be prosecuted. She began to find ways to hide the evidence, bribe witnesses, and even threaten those who might testify against her. This action only made the situation more tense, because the more Leslie tried to cover it up, the more people suspected her. Eva, meanwhile, could not escape the torment. She knew that Leslie had loved her, even though that love might be distorted by ambition and selfishness. But now, when faced with the opportunity to regain justice and a part of the property, Eva could not turn back. She told herself that this action was not only for money, but also to expose the truth, to free herself from the darkness of deception that had covered her entire life. However, deep in her heart, Eva still had a faint hope that Leslie would admit the truth, that her mother would choose the path of confession instead of continuing to lie. Tomas, who was initially just an outsider, now became an important factor. He witnessed Eva's change day by day, from a vulnerable woman to someone who was ready to fight to the end. Tomas was drawn into this vortex not only by curiosity, but also by personal ambition. He realized that standing by Eva could bring him many benefits, both financially and in terms of position. Therefore, Tomas encouraged Eva to go all the way, urged her to sue Leslie, and leaked information to the outside to put pressure on public opinion. When the lawsuit was officially brought to court, the whole community followed every development. Leslie appeared with a proud appearance, but her eyes were full of anxiety. Eva carried determination but could not hide her pain. The court became a battlefield, where maternal love was turned into evidence, where childhood memories were dissected in every detail, where promises and trust were turned into weapons of attack. Nicole and Ted unexpectedly sided with Eva, demanding a DNA test to prove their identity. This request was like the final stab straight into Leslie's heart, because she knew the truth could not be hidden forever. The results of the forensic examination, if it proves that Eva is not Leslie's child, will be the end of all illusions. Eva will lose the mother she once believed in, but at the same time find her biological parents. Leslie will lose everything from property, power to honor, even freedom. But the most terrible thing is not that loss, but the invisible void left behind. The maternal love that once existed between Leslie and Eva will be forever gone, and in Eva's heart will only be a wound that will never heal. The court has not yet made a final decision, but public opinion has already convicted Leslie. Her old enemies, from the Dupree family to her opponents in the community, are all gloating at her downfall. Anita, from the shadows, smiles with satisfaction as she witnesses the success of her plan. Nicole and Ted hold out a faint hope of finding their daughter, but also tremble at the possibility that Eva will never forgive them for not protecting her from the beginning. Eva, despite having the chance to find her real family, still carries an irreplaceable darkness in her heart, because she has lost a mother who, no matter how wrong she was her only support. In that moment, no one really wins. Leslie may be defeated, Eva may regain justice, Dupree may eliminate the threat, but all leave scars that will never heal. Money and power may tip the scales, but the wounds of lies and betrayal will forever haunt all who have entered this vortex. After facing the risk of losing everything in the lawsuit, anger and fear transformed Leslie into a different person. She no longer had the proud and confident exterior she had before, but instead was panic mixed with despair. Long, sleepless nights distorted her mind, and extreme thoughts began to echo in her head. For Leslie, Eva was not only her traitorous daughter, but also a direct threat, the only person capable of completely destroying her life. When pushed to the limit, Leslie began to consider solutions that she had never dared to think of before. In a moment haunted by humiliation, Leslie believed that the only way to save everything was to eliminate Eva or force her to drop the lawsuit. At first, the thought was just a flash in her mind, but it became clearer and clearer. She began to secretly follow Eva, remembering every habit, every travel route. Eva had not yet realized that the mother who had once cared for her now considered her an enemy. Leslie quietly prepared, finding a place discreet enough to keep Eva under control, not to kill her immediately, but to force her to sign the trust papers, returning all rights to her mother. On a gloomy evening, when Eva was leaving the court after a long day of confrontation, Leslie suddenly appeared. Her face was no longer as soft as before, but instead was terrifyingly cold. Before Eva could react, her mother and an accomplice covered her mouth and dragged her into a dark car. At that moment, Eva realized that everything had gone too far. The woman she had tried to forgive over and over again was no longer her mother, but someone who was willing to destroy her to protect herself. Leslie took Eva to an abandoned house in the suburbs, where everything was prepared. On the table was a stack of trust papers, carefully drafted. If Eva only signed, the entire fortune would return to Leslie. She stood there, her eyes blazing with anger, both threatening and pleading. Leslie said that she had no choice, that if Eva really was her daughter, she would understand and sign. But Eva, despite her fear, kept her pride in her eyes. She knew that if she signed, all her efforts would be lost, and the truth would be buried forever. Leslie's anger exploded when Eva refused. For a moment, Leslie's hands trembled as she gripped the makeshift weapon on the table, her eyes flashing with hysteria. Eva felt that death could come at any moment, but she still stubbornly kept silent. It was this indomitability that made Leslie even more furious, because it reflected the failure she could not bear. Leslie was no longer a woman seeking recognition, but had become someone willing to attack her own daughter to maintain power. And in that tense moment, memories flooded Leslie's mind from the first moment she held Eva, to the years they relied on each other to survive. She knew she had loved this child, but the fear of losing everything had clouded her motherly love. Leslie's inner self was torn between love and greed, between fear and the desire to survive. Eva saw the wavering moment in her mother's eyes, but instead of soothing her, she uttered words that made Leslie even more painful. That the truth could not be erased, that whether she signed or not, Leslie's crimes would be exposed. Those words were like the final stab. Leslie screamed in despair, rushing towards Eva with the intention of forcing her to sign right then and there. But that very extreme action could be the step that led to her destruction, because the loss of control caused Leslie to reveal all her sins to others. If anyone, Nicole, Ted, or even Tomas, were to stumble upon this hideout, everything would come crashing down. From the moment Leslie puts Eva in a life-or-death situation, the story takes a dark turn. Now, it is no longer a courtroom property dispute, but a battle for survival, where a mother blinded by greed can turn into a kidnapper, a destroyer of her own flesh and blood. And the question remains, will Eva be able to hold on to her courage to escape Leslie's clutches, or will she be forced to compromise, sacrificing justice to save her own life?